بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Continuing our conversation on the categories of those people and their approach to Tawbah. And last week we spoke about the Tawbah of the average Muslim and the Tawbah of those who are just a little bit above average, intermediates. And today we'll talk about the Tawbah of the experts. And when I say expert, I don't necessarily mean a scholar of the religion. Rather, what I mean is someone who the concept of Tawbah has expanded in their minds. They have experienced it in a way that really gets to the roots and to the depths of what Tawbah can offer the individual. And what's called Tawbatul Khawas, the Tawbah of the what's the word I'm looking for? The Tawbah of the just on my tongue, subhanAllah. The Tawbah of the wow, I gotta edit this out, right? Gotta cut this. SubhanAllah. I just really lost my train of thought, subhanAllah. Experts, that was another word I was looking for. It was right on the tip of my tongue, but anyway. Take two, right? I'm sorry? With the king? No, it's not that. I'm looking for the English word. I had it, subhanAllah. Anyway, it is the Tawbah of those who, who the concept of Tawbah has really hit their heart. And Ibn Qayyim, rahmatullah alayh, following the author of the book, Abu Ismail al-Harawi, says that this type of Tawbah, the people of this level, they repent from time. What does that mean? They repent from wasting time. Yeah, everyone, that's me, right? That's me too. Everyone has an amount of time that they waste, right? There's no one who is free of that. And therefore, this type of Tawbah seems like one that's very hard to reach. And therefore, it's heavy on the heart. Because not only are you trying to achieve something that seems unachievable, it's also trying to achieve something that is dear, that would force you to, or cause you to let go of something that is personal. And that is your free time. This is my time, right? And even, maybe in counseling or therapy or, motivational speakers, they'll say, make sure you have some time for yourself. And there's a truth to that, right? We do need time for ourselves. It does not mean we don't love our spouses or we don't love our families, but the person needs some time for themselves. Now, Ibn Qayyim isn't going to suggest that we completely remove that element from our lives. Rather, what he's going to say is that free time of yours, you spend it doing something, right? It could be watching TV, it could be reading a book, right? It could be, going on a hike or walking. What Ibn Qayyim is going to say is that when you have some free time, you do something that you love, something that's personal or dear to you. Well, in order to reach this level of Tawbah, the heart needs to change what is dear to it so that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is dear to it. And that requires quite a bit. And to give a very simple example, when you put your head on your bed and your pillow and you spend 5-10 minutes before you fall asleep, what are you thinking about? Because that's really personal time, right? That no one's going to talk to you. Kids are already asleep, hopefully. That's no one's going to bother. There's no responsibilities. It's just now your time. So here you can kind of see where your mind wanders and what it likes to think about. Now, ask yourself the following, or try doing the following rather. In these 5-10 minutes, I'm just going to think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and see how long you last. It probably won't be that long. And that's not because, we're bad Muslims or we don't care, we don't love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just that there's many improvements that need to be made in our hearts. And here is something you can scale that with. So this level of Tawbah is about utilizing your time to where it is always getting you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regardless of the situation. And as we will get to, inshallah, it's not about necessarily changing your daily routine, but rather investing in it and utilizing it and catering it to some in a way that gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we'll get into that later on. So Ibn Qayyim, or actually al-Harawi, says that wasting time leads to three things. Number one, yufdi ila dark al-naqisa. Wasting time will cause the person to achieve certain habits, certain traits that actually take away from their quality. Right? How so? By wasting time, let's give an example. Right? And when I say wasting time, I'm not saying this is haram. Let's just kind of put a disclaimer there. For example, watching TV. Unless you're watching some sort of documentary or some sort of educational program, watching TV, a show or whatever, in the end, it's a waste of time. Right? In the long run, that's not going to benefit you in any way. So it's pure entertainment. It's pure, wasting of time. And again, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way or a condescending way. I'm saying that in a way that in spirituality, in the long run, on the day of judgment, when you see in your book that you watch this show, it's not going to do anything for you. So by doing that, you expose yourself to certain, for example, on TV shows, certain behaviors, right? As we see in Hollywood, and we all see and we all know. You expose yourself to certain behaviors, certain practices that are either un-Islamic or discouraged in Islam, right? So by wasting your time doing that thing, it's affecting your behavior one way or another. So whenever you look at killing time, right? Whenever you look at killing time, you will find that what the person gains from that tends to be negative. Even, for example, if it's just sitting down and lying on your couch, and it could lead to laziness, for example. Lack of discipline. I watched an interesting YouTube clip about, how to get your life together. Right? Not that my life was going at. I just found it in, what's trending and whatnot. And I found this clip and I saw. And the person who made the video gives an interesting point. And I always get this question from the youth. How can I improve myself? How can I be more inspired? Right? I told them, and this is taken from the clip, it's not about being motivated and inspired. Right? It's about discipline. You're not going to wake up every day saying, yes, it's a new day, and I'm going to make the best of it. You're not going to wake up every day like that. That's just a reality. Even when it comes to faith and iman, and a person's relationship with Allah and their motivation towards Islam, you're not going to wake up the same way every single day. It goes up and down. That's the reality. And it is not, it's easy. When someone wants to do something, it's easy to do. Wanting to do something and doing it does not make a person special. It does not make them among the those who excel in this life. It is those who, when they don't want to do something, they still do it because that's what's going to push them forward. It's about discipline. So by wasting time, a lot of time that leads to laziness, or could lead to laziness, such as watching TV. It kind of breaks that routine of discipline, right? Let's say, for example, you know what, today, we always hear this. I had a long week, I'm just going to sleep the day away, right? You know what? It might be hard-earned rest. You might be deserving of that rest. However, if you're sleeping more than what your body needs, then you are wasting time, that person's wasting time, and it causes laziness. It breaks that routine. Mark Cuban, that billionaire who owns the Mavericks and whatnot, they had a video of him, and they asked him what his daily routine is. And he said, he wakes up at 6:30 in the morning, and then for the next hour and a half, he looks at emails, right? He gets around 700 to 1,000 emails a day. He looks at it. Then he goes, takes a shower, and then he exercises and takes another shower. And then he goes to the gym, drops his kid off at school, whatever. And then he says at 11 o'clock, I'm asleep, I'm in bed again. And then at the end of the clip, he says the following: I do this every single day. Every single day. He sleeps at 11 and wakes up at 6:30. And you find that studies show that this is better. Even on weekends, you should sleep the same time and wake up the same time. Because when your body is in a routine, it gets used to it. It feels comfortable. You'll always have that energy. So by wasting time, you break that routine, you hurt the discipline, and it puts a person off track. And that leads to taking away from the person's full potential, right? Even if it's laziness, like today I'm not going to pray Sunnah prayer. I'm tired. And you know what? The person can be tired. But it's not about, being tired and giving yourself a break. It's about staying on track and not wasting that time, not losing it, because when you lose it, you never regain it, as we'll get to, inshallah. So wasting time tends to take away from the person's full potential. Second, it says, وَتُطْفِئْ نُور الْمُرَاقَبَةِ, and it puts out the light of self-evaluation. Remember several weeks ago we spoke about self-evaluation, al-muhasabah. It was one of the very first stations of spirituality, that we as Muslims are encouraged, highly encouraged, that every day we make a habit, a routine, either in the morning after Fajr prayer or at night before going to sleep. Spend 10 minutes with yourself alone, away from distractions, and put yourself on that day, or in that day, when the person meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And imagine, the place that you once called home, earth, is falling apart, and the beautiful mountains we enjoy every day here in Southern California, right? It becomes dust, it evaporates, and the moon that we so dearly cherish, goes asunder and collapses, and the sun bursts and all that. And now you have this book in your hand, and it has everything that you ever did, and this is what's going to determine, paradise or hellfire. And may Allah make us among the people of paradise, where we'll be in paradise, what our level will be. And here what's at stake isn't, a job opportunity where, if you don't get this one, you can get another one. Or, my grades were of this, I was a C average or a B average, and, I get the job, but maybe the salary I get is a little bit less, and it's okay with time. I can make up for that, I can get a promotion. No, this is not how it is. Now it's eternity that's in front of you. And what's at stake is eternity. And again, may Allah make us among the people of paradise. The difference between one sunnah prayer, performing it and not performing it, is again an eternity of reward or lack of it. Right? So when a person so going back to muraqabah, this is very healthy for the heart, very healthy for the mind, and healthy for the person's iman and their relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you put yourself in that situation, in that moment, it really, really melts the heart. And I mean that in a positive way. It really breaks down the heart to where it starts, emotionally arouses it. And at that point, when you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you imagine Him in front of you, you see that now I can direct those emotions to Him and seek help from Him. So it's a very, very healthy and very relieving. It really relieves the heart, subhanAllah, from a lot of its stress, a lot of its worries. So when we spend our time in a way that's beneficial, when we sit there and we do this process, right? What we're regretting now isn't, or what we are afraid of isn't the time that we lost. It's something else, as we will get to, inshallah. However, when we waste time, right? By wasting time, we become distracted. Again, going back to the example of watching TV. When we watch TV, our mind is fully engaged and our heart is fully engaged with what's going on, right? And again, that's not going to lead us anywhere, spiritually speaking. So during that time, we lose this element of self-evaluation. And those moments, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is no longer on our minds or our hearts. The next life is no longer on our minds or our hearts. Our Islamic responsibilities are no longer on our minds or our hearts. We're fully engaged in that action. And again, I'm saying this is a permissible thing, it's not a haram thing, right? So when we waste time, we lose, and look at how the author words it, nur al-muraqabah, the light of self-evaluation. We lose that light, right? We fall off that track just a little bit, or stop for a moment. And from an Islamic perspective, that's not healthy for a person's iman. And when you look at spirituality, this is actually quite concerning. Wasting time causes us to no longer, it takes our minds off the prize. That's very concerning, especially when you look at the potential threats that are surrounding us day in, day out. Shaitan is waiting for us to make a mistake, or waiting for an opening to start whispering, say do this and do that, and just take us that much further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So although it sounds, quite ideal, this concept of constantly evaluating oneself, it is quite concerning that during this time we lose that element and we just fall off track and we lose some of that discipline, etc. And finally, number 3, وَيَقْدِرُ عَيْنَ الصُّحْبَةِ, and it takes a person away from the companionship, or it weakens the companionship. What does that mean? The companionship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at what a person can gain by being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not exaggerating to say that the list is endless. I mean, when you just look at prayer, analyze prayer, really, one day or the next time you pray, when you're alone praying by yourself, when you have some extra time where you don't have to follow the imam, or you don't have any responsibilities that you need to take care of, you just have an extra few minutes to pray, a sunnah prayer. Pray and contemplate about the words. What is Allah telling us, commanding us to say? And what you find, just to be concise because this is off topic, what you find is that every motion, every phrase that is uttered in prayer is benefiting the individual and opening the doors of opportunity for him or her. The epitome of that being sujood. When the Prophet ﷺ tells us, use that time, utilize it to make dua, because a person is closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then and there. When you think about, in those moments, how prayer before that is preparing you for that, reminding you that we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who hears what we say and is capable of answering our needs. And then He told us to prostrate to Him so that we can take advantage of that position and ask Him whatever we need. When you look at prayer from that angle, you find that prayer essentially is something that feeds our needs, is an opportunity for us to seek and get what we desire and what we want. When you think that in that moment, or even at any time, that we can simply raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Him and complain to Him, and even aspire through Him, and, oh Allah, I have these goals, I want to become this, and I have a goal to expand my business or to achieve a certain degree. You can help me with that. There are certain challenges on the way, financial burdens, tuition and whatnot, or there's other concerns, competition, etc. You're able to get me through all of that. Help me. I mean, can you imagine how valuable that is? Really, how valuable that is. In the Arab world with tribes and whatnot, one of the most valuable things when it comes to tribal relations is to have someone who's wise amongst you. Having a wise person amongst a tribe is priceless. They see it as priceless, wise, because that person has the wisdom, has the experience to solve problems and to avoid problems as well. One of the beautiful things about tribalism, although there are many negatives, but one of the beautiful things about tribalism is that because of this concept of having a wise person and making sure there's a wise person in the midst and giving that person responsibility, is that if any conflict starts looming between two tribes, these wise people get together and they solve it, they resolve it, and they prevent a lot of harm, a lot of problems, while keeping the family and the tribe together. That is priceless. To have someone amongst you who's able to solve problems and create solutions. Now we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the creator of solutions. He's the creator of solutions. The one who could take an impossible case and flip it completely around. Right? And although it's not every day where someone who is who has been diagnosed with cancer, is healed from that. But the fact of the matter is, we believe that Allah can do that. It's not like, in the medical field, the doctor has to be very honest with the condition. Say there's no hope. That's it, right? That's how they are trained, right? But when we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's always hope. And even if the result of the situation is not as we wanted it, for example, a person passes away because of that illness, we believe that illness is a source of reward or expiation in the next life. So there's always something to aspire towards and to hope for. That's just one angle to look at when it comes to being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. This concept of ma'iyya, companionship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for believers, for His awliya, it's a companionship where He is constantly, at every millisecond, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting the individual and making sure that they are okay and putting things in their path that will keep them on the straight path, that will protect them from potential harms. And one of His names is Al-Latif. This name Al-Latif means, has two meanings. One is that what His knowledge is so precise, so detailed, that the thing that goes unnoticed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala notices it. And also it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives favors, helps, provides people, His friends especially, His awliya, in a manner that they don't even recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there helping them. And I'll give you a simple example, and this is our reality today. A lady is walking with her hijab, a crazy person can be there and start plotting and planning. Actually, I'll give you a more real example, an actual example. I'm sure you all saw that video of the veteran who wanted to blow up a masjid. There's a video, a few months ago, it was released, where a veteran, I believe of the army, white supremacist, racist or Osama-phobe, saw Muslims, and I guess he owns a DSW, and he saw two niqabi ladies enter and buy from his store, and he was absolutely furious. These women are coming and buying from my store and whatnot. So, he decided to blow up the local mosque. He had a plan and everything, right? And then, certain things happened. You can watch the clip, and that changed. Now, that Muslim community had no idea of this. Imagine if that went through. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected that community by guiding this person. That is the lutf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We never know of the dangers that are around us that we just completely do not notice. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting us. Take for example germs and viruses. They're everywhere, right? They're everywhere. We can walk by a lethal virus, but it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's lutf, His protection, that protects us from that, and that goes completely unnoticed, right? SubhanAllah. And I just mentioned two things of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having a close relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us. That's just two of an infinite list. And we cannot even fathom, we cannot even wonder. It's just quite marvelous. And just to think about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can offer us, it's enough to motivate us to at least want to be closer to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But wasting time only takes away from that. Because the closer a person is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more that they're going to get. And the more effort a person puts into getting close to Allah, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, helps that person out. And the famous hadith, in which, I believe hadith Qudsi, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if a servant of mine comes to me walking, then I will go to them running. If a servant of mine comes to me, gets closer to me with a hand span, or by a hand span, then I will get closer to him by an arm span, right? Now, of course, this is metaphorical, saying that whatever effort you put into getting closer to me, then know I will always give you more than what you put in. The effort that you put into coming towards me, then I will always show you more than what you put in. And this just shows us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's concern for us, His wanting us to be close to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, His mercy, His compassion, wanting to give us. So wasting time, we lose that. We lose so much. I mean, imagine a very simple example. 5 minutes. Imagine 5 minutes that you wasted looking at your phone, playing Candy Crush or whatever. And again, I don't mean this in a negative way, but I'm just giving examples of our reality, what we do. And perhaps it's impossible to live lives that are completely centered around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to where we don't waste a second. Perhaps that's impossible. But think of these words and this session not as criticism of what we do, but rather motivation to always aspire to what's better. That even if we cannot discipline ourselves enough to where we always invest in those 5 minutes, even if one time or 2 times or 3 times before we open Candy Crush we say, you know what, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to make dua for 5 minutes, then in the long run that's worth it, right? We have gained something from this session. So imagine those 5 minutes we spend playing Candy Crush or whatever. We utilize it to make a dua, right? We utilize it to make wudu and pray 2 rak'ahs, or we utilize it to read a little bit of Quran, or to read a hadith, or to listen to one of those very beautiful 5-minute Iman motivators or whatever on YouTube. Then that is something that will remain with us, not only get us closer to Allah, thus receiving more from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's 5 minutes that on the Day of Judgment we will see in our book, and we will say, Alhamdulillah, these are 5 minutes that brought me reward, which I will now enjoy for eternity. That's the way we look at it. And the closer a person is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, the closer they are to Him in the next life. And the closer a person is to Allah in the next life, the higher their rank is in paradise. And the various levels differ so greatly that, subhanAllah, 10 hasanat, doing one good deed, can be a big difference in what you have for all of eternity versus what you might have missed for all of eternity. This is heavy on the heart, and again, I've mentioned this before. Part of this course is heavy on the heart, but that's also healthy for the heart, right? Because it really, when you feel that weight, it starts burning some of those constraints that are creating barriers between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and us and our full potential. So here are 3 things which the author points to that wasting time leads to. Number 1, it is wasting time causes us to lose discipline, thus taking away from our full potential. Number 2, it turns out the light of self-evaluation. And number 3, it weakens our companionship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, a person, in Islamically speaking, when it comes to Iman, is never static. They're never at a standstill. They're either moving forward or they're moving backwards. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out to this, and He says, إِنَّهَا لَإِحْدَى الْكُبَرْ نَذِيرٌ لِلْبَشَرِ لِمَنْ شَاءَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يَتَقَدَّمْ أَوْ يَتَأَخَّرْ. Right? That this book and the goal of the Prophet ﷺ, or his role, is to warn us, and the consequences are dire. It is Day of Judgment, it is heaven and hell. There are major consequences that come with this responsibility of believing and following Islam and following the Quran. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever wills amongst you either to go forward or to move backwards. So our faith is either propelling us forward, raising our ranks, or it's taking us backwards. And wasting time, although we could waste time doing something permissible, but if we do something that is permissible, not getting us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's technically taking us backwards. Why? Well, because every moment we don't utilize is a moment lost. We will never regain that. So if you imagine 2 people, one person who utilized 5 minutes for the sake of Allah versus one who didn't do anything with those 5 minutes, well, that person who utilized it for for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now at a higher level, and this person is still here. So technically, he went back. So think of it like inflation. You know, if your investment is only making 3 or 4%, well, what is the inflation rate per year? About 3 or 4%. So investors call that dead money. You're technically not making money. You know, when it comes to salaries and your salary increases 3 or 4% a year, right? And although that, you know, someone with a decent salary or a higher salary, that might sound like a lot. But when it comes to inflation, you're not moving anywhere. You're still making the same thing. So technically you are actually moving behind, because that is money that wasn't utilized in a way where it profited. And same thing with Iman. You might be at the same spot. However, other people are getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's taking away from a person's full potential. Or even looking at it from just an individual level, right? If a person stays here when they could have been here, then they technically have fell behind among the other harms of wasting time that we have just mentioned. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult and perhaps unrealistic to completely change our routine lives. In fact, it's from an Islamic perspective, we don't find anything in our tradition that tells us to change our routine lives unless we're doing something haram, right? Of course, that has to be changed. However, when you look at how the Prophet ﷺ engaged with his companions and how he himself lived with his wives, it wasn't about changing daily routines. It wasn't about, working less. It wasn't about not spending time with your family. It wasn't about, not going and enjoying nature or eating and, having a good time with your family. But rather, it was about utilizing your routines in a way where it gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is through intention. That, I'm taking my family out to Disney, right? I'm going to take them to have Disney. Well, instead of just having that as a simple routine where you do once a year or twice a year or whatever, and you do it for the sake of your kids, and they ask you, so you do that and that's it, and you enjoy a good day. Rather, before going, you sit down for a moment and say, okay, how can this get me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And you start reflecting on the verses and hadith which we have in our tradition. One of which is, إدخال السرور في قلب المسلم, bringing happiness to the heart of a believer. Well, are your kids believers? Right? Is your spouse a believer? Well, if you're taking them to Disney and they are feeling that happiness and that joy, and it's bringing a smile to their face, well, if you have this in your mind and this is your intention, well, there's reward. And that is actually quite heavy reward that we don't take enough advantage of. And I love this hadith, and I always mention it, and I always want to continue to mention it. Because man, if we lived in a life where the goal of every person is to bring happiness, I'm not going to say happiness, joy. Right? Happiness is a broad word, and right? If you bring joy to other people, and you're getting reward for that, and not only does that say something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His compassion and what He wants for us, but you're getting reward for taking your kids, and it's not just $500, $600, $1,000 down the drain. That's actually $1,000 of charity that you have utilized to get yourself closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Visiting family, well, part of our faith is making sure our ties to kin is strong and healthy. The family unit, the family is very important in Islam, and it has the goal of keeping it healthy, because a healthy society is a society in which the family unit is healthy. And a society that's bound or on a path of destruction is a society where the family is no longer revered, which is quite unfortunate, because we see that in our times today. So when you think about this and wasting concept, or this session about wasting time, think about how can I just do what I do and just utilize it in a way where it gets me closer to Allah. Now, there are some things where you probably won't be able to find a proper Islamic or a legitimate reason to do it, or intention, such as watching TV. You might not find that. And here we would have to ask ourselves the question: do I really need this? Right? Do I need to do this, or should I do something else? Right? And yes, unless, and again, this is maybe far-fetched, unless while watching TV you have one of those nice beads, dhikr beads, the masbaha, and while you're doing that, you utilize your time to make dhikr. Now, of course, that's far-fetched because your mind is somewhere completely else. However, from a different perspective, maybe you have to watch a movie with your kids. Let's be honest, right? And I actually promote that. I encourage parents to watch what their kids are watching it with them, because it'll give you an idea of where their mindset is. Because Hollywood is our culture. Let's just be real. Hollywood is the culture, and that's very concerning. Because Hollywood, man, they're becoming more and more aggressive in the ideas they are putting in the minds of people, right? In your face homosexuality. It's a point. They have to make a point and constantly remind you this person is a homosexual for people to accept, or this person is of no gender, right? This is something I saw recently. A person comes, a woman, and they calls her, who is this woman? And says, I am not a woman, I am of no gender, right? In your face, you have to accept it. This is a culture now. So you can utilize that if you're watching with your kids and say, hey, you know what? I'm making sure my kids are Islamically on track. There you go. You have an intention there. Or while you're watching, you do dhikr. And although your mind might not be in it, Imam Ghazali said that it is better that your tongue is moving in dhikr, even if your heart is not with you. That is better than not moving your tongue at all. And this leads me to my next point of how we can utilize our times. We're at Disney, we're at the mall, we're at these places. Dhikr always fits in. Doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never an obstacle. It is never something that cannot be utilized. It is never something that you can't take advantage of. Anywhere, anytime, any place, whatever the situation is, you can always do dhikr. And Aisha radiallahu anha tells us, the Prophet ﷺ would do dhikr in every situation, every state, regardless. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises those who they contemplate and they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while standing up, while sitting down, and while lying down as well. Kind of showing us the various scenarios. If you're standing up, doing your work, you're going out, you're driving, you can make dhikr. If you're sitting down, just relaxing at home, you're at your office, you can do dhikr. If you're lying down, resting, going to sleep, you can do dhikr. And what's beautiful about this, look at the graciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that although dhikr is a very light act of worship, it's very easy for the person to do. Anyone can do it. However, the reward that comes with it is immense. And for the remaining few minutes, I just want to focus on some of the virtues of dhikr. Now, when you look at our Quran and our Sunnah, there is no act of worship which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do an excessive amount of, except one. And there is no supplication, invocation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us. There's nothing our tradition tells us to ask more of except one thing. When it comes to what we should ask more of, it's not iman. There is no hadith, there is no verse that says, oh Allah, increase my iman. There's nothing wrong with saying that, by the way. If a person in their dua says, oh Allah, increase my iman, there's nothing wrong with that. However, when you look at the Quran and through it we take wisdom, there's only one thing we're asked to ask an increase of, and that is knowledge. Knowledge. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And say, Allah, increase my knowledge. And why is that? It's because knowledge, or iman, is conditional to knowledge. And this is very clear in the Quran. If you want iman, you need knowledge. You need knowledge of the faith. You need knowledge of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You need knowledge of the next life. You need knowledge of the world. You need knowledge of the Quran. It's quite amazing what the Quran can offer us. Really, it is, subhanAllah, the more I study it, the more fascinating it is. And this is not hard to, anyone can realize this. But what I see as I kind of I learn more and I read more Western scholarship, I find that a lot of the concerns of, I don't want to say the religious sector, but I will say, Christian scholars, for example, when they talk about secularism, when they talk about liberalism and whatnot, and they approach these topics in an objective manner, And you find, they start talking about, well, how did we get to this place? How did, in the 1500s, when the existence of God was never questioned, where God was present in every sector of life, every section of life, in the public sphere, in the political sphere, in the home, he was everywhere. How did we go from that to 2000s, where God is just, he's there. He has no presence in the public sphere. He has no presence in the political sphere. And it's quite easy to just say, you know what, I'm just going to disregard God or not even believe in him. In fact, it's easier to do that than to believe in God. I'm not talking about Muslims in America. I'm talking about Christians in America, right? How did we go from that? And he gives lists, and perhaps they are accurate. However, what I'm seeing is that when these Western scholars talk about these issues, one thing that doesn't come in their arguments is the book. I'm talking about the Bible. I don't know if this is them just addressing a secular sector of society, academia, or a pro-atheist, and they just can't use their Bible as evidence or as a source. However, when I think of that, the Quran is really what keeps this ummah together. It's what keeps the person on track. The stronger of a relationship, the more understanding a person has of the Quran, the stronger of a relationship they have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it answers the questions. And as these scholars put these very valid questions in front of us, in front of the reader, I feel that the answers are quite clear in the Quran. How did we get there? And this is not the time for it, and we can perhaps talk about this in a separate session. The Quran gives us so much. It is so powerful. It is so powerful that it transcends time and place. It's really amazing. And if we don't take advantage of that, it's really, subhanAllah, it's very silly. And it's said that when the Mongols entered Baghdad, right? Who was it? Holako, I believe. Holako? One of those Mongols, one of the descendants of Genghis Khan. When they entered Baghdad and they sacked the capital, it said that he took all the gold that was in the capital, or in the palace, and he put it in front of the caliph, and he told him to eat it. And the caliph, being confused, like, what do you mean I can't eat gold? He said, you have all this money here that you didn't use to defend your city. Then just eat it. You did not benefit from it, right? You have a treasure in front of you. And here you are about to be killed. And your city is going to collapse. The capital of the Muslim Ummah is about to collapse. What did you gain from this treasure? How silly is that? Well, I can say the same thing today to the Muslims. You have the Quran. You have this treasure in front of you. Yet, the questions I get from youth, unfortunately, is why do I have to read the Quran in Arabic? Really? This is the language of the Quran. Why don't you learn Arabic? There's more complaints about why I have to learn Arabic than there is efforts in actually learning Arabic. And I'm always proud of our brothers and sisters who aren't of Arab descent, who spend time and learn the Quran or learn the Arabic language, right? Props to them. And I'm Arabic, right? But I didn't have an Arabic tongue growing up. Yes, I heard my parents speak Arabic, but they spoke the Palestinian dialect. The Quran is quite different in the Palestinian dialect. I had to learn. I was at a point where I was at the end of my bachelor's, and it was either continuing to a master's degree in psychology or changing my route to Islamic studies. And I prayed istikhara because I had the GRE book. I was about to start studying for the GRE. So I prayed istikhara. Should I do that or should I learn? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously took me on the path of knowledge. And instead of studying the GRE, I studied a beginner's book on the Arabic language. And me, the Arab, I had to learn the letters of the Arabic alphabet. And that's what I was doing in between my junior and senior year of my undergrad. I was learning how to write these letters that I just wrote up there. And I'm of Arab descent. The effort is there. You can put the effort, and you will find results. especially when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps those who try to get closer to Him. I went on a very big tangent. So going back, the only act of worship which the Quran tells us to do a lot of, an excessive amount of, it's not prayer. There's nothing that says and pray a lot. It's not even dua. Right? It's not fasting. On the contrary, you find that our Prophet ﷺ teaches us to be moderate in the way we pray, moderate in the way we fast. Don't do too much. But when it comes to dhikr, the Quran tells us to do a lot of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ كَثِيرًا وَسَبِّحْ بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْإِبْكَارِ. And remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, and praise Him, glorify Him in the morning and in the evenings. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ ذِكْرًا كَثِيرًا وَسَبِّحُوهُ بُكْرَةً وَعَشِيًّا. O you who believe, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, and glorify Him in the morning and in the evenings. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises الذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. He praises the males who remember Allah a lot and the females who remember Allah a lot. فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ. The verse I mentioned, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala standing up, sitting down, and on your sides. Do a lot of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because not only does it get you closer to Allah, there's a lot of reward there. And very quickly, going over some of these hadith, the Prophet ﷺ and the companions were once traveling, and the Prophet ﷺ says, سَبَقَ الْمُفَرِّدُونَ. And this hadith is in Muslim. He said the mufarridun, this term, this word, have excelled. Now in the Arabic language, even in the English language, when you say, for example, Muhammad excelled, without mentioning what he excelled in, there's a sort of generalization. He excelled in all things. So the same thing here. The Prophet ﷺ said that these people, al-mufarridun, they excelled in all manners. In all matters. So they asked, who are the mufarridun? And they said, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that these people are those who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, male and females. So what the hadith is saying is that those who are able to excel in the remembrance of Allah, they will excel in all matters. They will excel in this life and the next life. They are the top-notch people. They're people whose iman will excel in all aspects. In another hadith narrated in Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, the Prophet ﷺ says, should I not inform you of the purest of actions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the action that will get you the highest levels, and is better for you than spending your gold and silver, meaning in charity, and is better than meeting your enemy and hitting them and them hitting you. So we know of the virtues of jihad and fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and defending a person's land for the sake of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, or the Prophet here, is saying that all these things, whether it comes to charity or performing jihad, something that is better than all of this and will get you a high rank is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And in another hadith narrated in Bukhari and Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a hadith Qudsi, I am as my servant believes me to be. Husn al-dhan, and we'll get to that inshallah, I believe, in this book later on, but we don't have time to go over that now. And I am with him or her so long as they remember me. So when we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever remembers me in their selves, right, in their minds, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembers them as well. That really melts the heart, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above the seven thrones remembers us and thinks of us. And that says a lot about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, that He is concerned with each and every person, and that someone of ultimate authority thinks of us as an individual. And that's quite amazing. And if he or she remembers me or mentions me in a gathering, then I mention him or her in a gathering better than their gathering, meaning the angels. Allah is mentioning the person's name. He's mentioning your name to the angels, who we love and cherish. Whenever the term angel has such a positive meaning to it, that even people who don't really care about angels, they'll say, so and so is an angel, to show the purity. And we just have this love for angels. So Allah is not only mentioning us, not only is He remembering us, He's mentioning us to the angels. And in other hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes shows us off to the angels. Look at my servants, look at how they pray and they worship me, look at how they have gathered on the day of Arafah for my sake. Tabaha, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, or is mentioned in hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows off using us, subhanAllah. And if my servant comes close to me, a hand span, then I will come closer to them, an arm span. So if they come closer to me in a hand span, I come closer to them in a forearm span. This is a forearm, right? Dhira'. And then if they come closer to me, a forearm span, then I will come closer to them in a hand span. Again, I mentioned this hadith, meaning that the little effort we put, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us even more than what we put in. And the final hadith I want to mention, narrated in Bukhari, is that the example of a person, or the comparison of a person who remembers Allah versus the person who doesn't remember Allah, is the example of comparing a person or something that is alive versus something that is dead. So it is our life, it is our inspiration, it is our motivation. It keeps our blood flowing, our spiritual blood flowing, and it keeps that, the motivation high. Such a simple, effortless act can bring us so much. And I'll conclude with this final point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the most effective path to Him requiring the least amount of effort. And what does that tell you about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is? The best way to get closer to Him is the easiest thing a person can do. And that shows, it just tells us wonders about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is and what our purpose is, what He wants for us. And it's very unfortunate that today people have such a negative opinion, or have such a misinformed opinion about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And you have these silly questions, and I say silly because they are silly. Why isn't Allah doing anything? Right? I made a dua and Allah didn't answer my dua. When you look at something like this, right, it's so easy to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but our time is spent in a way where we just completely ignore it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us be among the dhakirin Allah kathiran wa dhakirat, those who remember Him constantly, whether male or female. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us overcome the challenge of wasting time. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.